Welcome back to the AI Ripple Effect podcast, everybody. Today we're joined by Kevin Lawton, who is the founder of the New Warehouse. Welcome to the podcast, Kevin.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do at the New Warehouse and who your typical customers are?
I've been in the warehousing industry for 13, 14 years now. Was not something I planned on doing. It didn't grow up thinking about working in a warehouse at all. Ended up working in inventory control as my start, and then from there. And at some point, I was like, oh, this could be an interesting career. And at that point, I wanted to learn more about the industry. I had not gone to school for supply chain or logistics. I went to school for business, for entrepreneurial studies, and actually I minored in event planning and arts administration. Definitely not supply chain in any shape or form. But I wanted to learn more about the industry. And at that time, when I was looking around trying to see what interesting resources are there to learn from, I could not find anything that was really interesting. Like, it was all kind of these trade publications that had just been regurgitated online. And as someone that grew up in the early 2000s, like, blogs were a big way for me to get information about things that I was interested in. And there was nothing out there that was really grabbing my attention for warehousing. I decided to start one myself, and that's how the New Warehouse was born. Was going to be a blog at first, but quickly realized I didn't have time from when I was working on the warehouse floor as an inventory control manager in a brand new distribution center, trying to get that up and running. There was no time to write and edit and then figure out how to even get this out into the world. So someone was, you should try podcasts. And I'm like, okay, I've never listened to a podcast before, but maybe that sounds easier. I just talk, don't have to worry about editing. Could be a little more raw, I guess, in a sense. And that's ultimately how the New Warehouse started, which at its core is a podcast all about warehousing, and started that in 2019. The first episode came out and has now grown over the last 6 years into a more fleshed out media business. But it's all about warehousing, and it's all about allowing people to understand and discover more about what's happening in the warehousing industry and some of the latest solutions that are out there as well.
Right. And that's technology solutions, or is that sort of the structural elements of warehouses?
It's all over, covers the whole spectrum. I like to say we've talked about everything from floor tape to humanoid robotics. Actually, just as we're recording this now, I just finished recording with Boston Dynamics, and we were talking about their stretch robotics and spot and things like that.
Awesome.
Covering kind of everything that's happening within those four walls, but definitely a big focus on the technology aspect too, trying to create that awareness around the solutions that are out there to help people solve the problems they're facing every day in their operations.
Fascinating. And do you have a global coverage? Are you looking at warehousing across the world?
We have an audience, national audience, so we have people that listen all over. It's an English-speaking podcast, right? Obviously, we see our biggest audience here in North America, but we do have a big audience in other parts of the world as well. We've interestingly ranked in some countries that I've never even thought that we would reach. So it's pretty interesting to see where people listen from. But I mean, there's warehouses all over the world, so it makes sense.
And what are you seeing as both in logistics and specifically in warehousing as the biggest trends in the market currently?
Certainly, there's a lot going on with tariffs, of course, and that's having some impact on the warehousing world, especially from a 3PL aspect, because these third-party logistics providers that are doing fulfillment, there's been a lot of different strategies to kind of navigate around tariffs, whether that's fulfilling directly from China or fulfilling from Canada or Mexico. And there's been a lot of fluctuation on what does that strategy actually look like now long term, because that was kind of a way to avoid or alleviate some of the tariffs, and now that's kind of uncertain of what's going to happen. Seeing both sides of the table where people are either holding back on doing more, or people are like, I'm just going to get a lot of inventory into the country now, the US into the country now. They're looking for more warehouse space. But I think on the other side, looking at solutions and technology and things like that, I think we're definitely at sort of a tipping point where robotics are becoming the future, and not only the future, but the right now. I think we're seeing that, as we know, Amazon and the DHLs have been embracing robotics for a number of years. We're at a point where we're starting to see that penetration into the mid-market as well. I think robotic solution providers are providing more accessibility to these solutions, and they're recognizing that market needs to be served now as well, because even though humans are still very much involved in warehousing operations, but there continues to be challenges around humans just wanting to work in warehouses. And the long term for that is not going to be enough people essentially to fulfill those positions. I think it's just that inevitable that more automation, more robotics are going to come in, but really seeing where it's starting to penetrate, and it's not just R&D, testing, pilots, it's actual applications that are running in these operations every single day.
And are you seeing that mostly for the smaller size of freight, or do you see it across the spectrum from huge crates through to the smaller packages?
I definitely think there's a lot of limitations still on where we see that, but we're seeing applications where addressing all different aspects. Right now, a lot of the robotics companies, automation companies, they're trying to focus on what is the most prevalent use case, because obviously if they're making something for like a wind turbine blade, there's only so many of those out there, right, that you need to move from time to time. And but focusing on a lot of e-commerce, and I saw obviously big penetration and focus on attacking the picking aspect of e-commerce has been a huge focus on these solutions, and there's tons of solutions that are focused on that now. But now we're starting to see peripherally these other processes in the warehouse start to get automated. So, looking at inbound containers, unloading them, whether they're palletized, floor loaded containers, unloading those, looking at automation at the pack station prior to shipping out, and kind of connecting those dots now. And it's interesting to see too, like how a lot of these solutions are kind of coming together to work together. Humans work together, but now the robots are kind of trying to figure out how to work together as well. There's a lot of challenges certainly around more of the big and bulky, like you mentioned, big crates there.
Yeah.
When we look at some of that, certainly AMRs, AGVs can move those things from point A to point B, but in terms of picking up some of those things, I think that's still a little far off to go beyond just the movement back and forth. There's some really big and strong robotic arms out there, but you're seeing that a lot more in manufacturing operations than a warehouse operation.
Okay, interesting. And apart from the obvious application within robotics, what is your take on AI across, say, traditional operations within the warehousing space and also wider in logistics around helping optimize or augment existing operational stuff? Is there anything you're seeing in that space?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's another big trend that's happening, and a lot of the robotic stuff that I was talking about is driven by AI in some way, right? But that it's really starting to penetrate into the industry. I mean, the thing that's fascinating to me about AI is that AI has been around for a long time, but it's become digestible in a sense, probably thanks to chat GPT over the last like 2 years, where people are really starting to leverage it, really starting to understand it more, and seeing these additional use cases. When we look at the warehouse setting where AI is coming into play, what I'm seeing the most is one is certainly from a computer vision perspective, right? Seeing people add computer vision into their existing camera systems, or leveraging computer vision on robotics solutions, which is being able to either detect things that are happening in the operation and then raise that exception and call that out, right? If we think about, which I love, because of being a former operations manager, you can only see so much at one time, right? If you have this extra set of eyes and it's calling out things that otherwise you would potentially miss, like especially around like safety, for example, those are great use cases to utilize that. Seeing it on drones as well, where it's going out to do inventory counting and location checking, things of that nature. But also seeing a lot now, say in this year, I think the first half of this year, heavy focus on the AI agents and agentic AI, actually looking at AI solutions to be able to do some of these repetitive tasks. If you look at a warehouse, and there's tons of repetitive tasks, and that's why it's such a natural fit for robotics too. We pick up this box, put it down, then we pick up that box, we put it down, we pick up that box, etc. And it's just kind of a lot of repetitive stuff, which is perfect applications for these solutions. Seeing that some of the challenges there around that. They're all great use cases because there is a ton of things that the typical warehouse operations manager, supervisor, data and paperwork and things like that they just kick the can down the road because they're worried about something that's happening on the floor. I got to come back and do this data analysis or look at this. It's a lot of things that get missed just simply because there's not the time to focus on that. So I think it's a great application for AI. But I think part of the challenge and around it is kind of like what is the right understanding, what is the right thing for me to apply AI to, and how does it work. And there's a lot of new technologies and things in the warehousing industry. There's a big change management aspect to it because same regard that people are doing the same thing every day. There's a lot of repetitive tasks. When you throw in a new tool and change the way they're going to do it, then that can be like quite just disruptive from a mental perspective, and I see some resistance there. But I think that it's really starting to penetrate the industry, and talking to companies that are small, big, have one facility, have multiple facilities that are all looking at ways to apply AI, and I've put AI in place in multiple occasions.
Awesome. And what are your plans for the coming year with respect to growth? You talked about the more of a media focus for,
Sure.
But what are your plans for the next 12 months or so?
Plans for the next 12 months. That's a great question. I think that, we're continuing to grow the podcast as a media brand itself. We're focusing on doing new reports on the warehousing industry, which is something new for us. We're going to be releasing a overall warehouse safety report here that we've done research on and compiled together. And then we'll be working on another one in the next couple months around asset utilization, actually. So doing some more of that, and then we'll be expanding our reach a little further, attending a lot of trade shows and conferences, which I just came off a marathon of over the last 5 weeks. I've been at least one per week, pretty much. So I'm happy to be home right now, I'll say that. But it's all about kind of increasing how can we bring more awareness, because there's just so much happening in the industry. We're looking at different ways through the channel to be able to share that information, and we'll probably get more into doing more written content, as well as potentially expanding the new warehouse with maybe some other people as contributors as well. That's probably like all I can say at this point, because we haven't fully fleshed this out and hasn't been really announced yet, but it's kind of what we're looking for in the future, because I'm one guy. I can only do so many podcasts myself, right? We need somebody else, I think, too, to be out there covering some of this stuff, because there's just so much to cover, right?
Yeah, 100%. And for the guys out there listening, interested to know what the new warehouse does and where they can get more information, what are the best ways to do that?
The best way is to go to thenewwarehouse.com. That has everything that's going on with the new warehouse. Or you can find us on your favorite podcast platform. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. And if you want to talk to me, just connect with me on LinkedIn, and happy to answer any messages, and posting content there all the time as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Kevin. I'll make sure we add those links to the description of this podcast so that people who are out there interested can follow through. Thank you, everybody out there, for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you, Kevin.
All right. Thank you.